Hello, welcome to the Gaelic Roots Lunchtime Series at Boston College. Gaelic Roots is sponsored by BC Irish Studies in collaboration with the Burns Library. We've been exploring some regional Irish traditional fiddle styles, and this time we travel to the Cork and Kerry border. I'd like to introduce my good friend and master fiddle player Matt Cranich to speak about the Sliabh Luachra style with a particular focus on the music of Padraig O'Keeffe. Please welcome to the Gaelic Roots Lunchtime Series, Matt Cranich.
Céard míle fáilte roimh Illig. Hello from Cork on the south coast of Ireland. You are all very welcome to my presentation here today, which will focus on the music of the Sliabh Luachra fiddle master Padraig O'Keeffe. As well as considering facets of his life, I'll play some tunes which have come to me through his handwritten manuscripts as well as from a number of his pupils. Before starting, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to Sheila Falls for inviting me to be part of this lunchtime series. I'm delighted to be here at a distance of some 3,000 miles. I look forward to being with you in person the next time. Padraig O'Keeffe, widely considered to be the greatest musician from the Sliabh Luachra area, has become a major name in the world of Irish traditional music, particularly in the realm of fiddle playing. A contemporary of other leading figures such as Michael Coleman and James Morrison, he did not achieve in his lifetime anything like the same level of recognition as they had. It was primarily after his death that he came to greater prominence as one of the most important Irish traditional musicians of the 20th century. His seminal influence is to be had today through the rich tradition of music he passed on, directly by means of his own playing and through his manuscripts, which were written in his special notation systems, as well as indirectly through his teaching of so many of the great Sliabh Luachra players. Sliabh Luachra, the Rushy Mountain, is located on the Cork-Kerry border, along where the River Blackwater rises and flows, and encompasses parts of East Kerry, northwest Cork and southwest Limerick. The region is renowned for its distinctive style of music and its special repertoire of tunes, including slides and polkas. Many of these tunes have taken their titles from townlands and villages in the area, places such as Ballydesmond, Brosna, Gnievgwille, Knocknagree and Scartaglen. However, its precise geographic boundaries are not well defined, a subject which at times can give rise to much discussion and good-humoured debate. Indeed, the borders of this unique musical enclave may well be movable. A very colourful, if exaggerated, description of its whereabouts was provided by Con Houlihan, a journalist from the area. When asked to define where Sliabh Luachra was, he replied as follows. It was a movable feast. Long ago, it was confined to a few parishes beyond Glounthaune, which is where the River Blackwater rises. It was confined to maybe at the most a square mile. It's now half Kerry and most of Cork, up to Listowel, Newcastle West, down to Mallow and gone away down into Ballyvourney. It's expanding every day. 'Tis consuming up the whole country. Padraig was born in 1887 at Glounthaune, approximately midway between Castleisland, County Kerry, and Ballydesmond, County Cork, on the Kerry side of the county boundary. His father was master in the local school, and the family lived across the road in the house which remained Padraig's home throughout his life. His mother was Margaret O'Callaghan, who played the concertina and fiddle. She was one of a very musical family from Down near Kishkane on the Cork side of the county bounds. From a young age, Pádraig showed a great aptitude for music, and he learned to play the fiddle, accordion and concertina. His uncle, Cal O'Callaghan, who played the fiddle, was a major influence. After training as a teacher, Pádraig took over as master in Clowntown School in 1915. Increasingly, however, his interest in this way of life waned, and he lost his post in 1920, with the music winning out, and indeed all that went with it. From then until his death in 1963, Pádraig taught music throughout the locality, mostly the fiddle, but also the accordion. He travelled around this very rural area, mainly on foot, occasionally on a bicycle, calling to the houses of the pupils. When writing out the tunes for them, he used 2 different systems of tablature, even though he himself was able to read and write standard music notation. These tablature systems were sometimes referred to as the code or Pádraig's code, and there was one for the fiddle and one for the accordion. In the fiddle code, the 4 spaces of the standard 5-line music staff were used to represent the 4 strings of the fiddle. Numbers 0 to 4 were placed in the appropriate spaces to indicate the fingers required to play particular notes. Like that. Other symbols specified bow direction, slurring, grace notes and further ornamentation. In the accordion system, numbers and symbols were used to denote the keys or buttons to be pressed and the direction in which the bellows was to be moved. In addition to his teaching activities, Pádraig also established a reputation as a very accomplished fiddle player, with a large repertoire of tunes and a very musical style of playing. He also became known as a storyteller, character and sharp wit. Indeed, to this day, there are many anecdotes about him in wide circulation among the Sliabh Luachra music community. For example, on one occasion, when supposedly he was chided for regular non-attendance at Mass, we are told that his response was to expound on the perceived relativity between time spent in a church and time spent in a pub by stating that 5 minutes in a church is like an hour, but an hour in a pub is like 5 minutes. With the passage of time, he started to achieve greater recognition both within Sliabh Luachra and outside the area, and was recorded on a number of occasions by various collectors. In particular, Seamus Ennis made a large number of recordings for both Radio Éireann and the BBC. A selection of these, dating from 1948 and 1949, is featured on the CD The Sliabh Luachra Fiddle Master Pádraig O'Keeffe, published by RTE in 1993. Pádraig is also to be heard, along with his stellar pupils Dennis Murphy and Julia Clifford, on the wonderful Kerry Fiddles recording. This was released on LP by Topic Records in 1977 and on CD by Ossian Publications in 1993. The LP cover features the iconic photo of Pádraig taken by Liam Clancy in 1955. The music consists of solo, duet and trio selections and was recorded by Seamus Ennis originally for the BBC on the 9th of September 1952 in Castleisland. Kerry Fiddles is an eloquent testament to the beauty and power of unaccompanied fiddle music. The opening tune, The Top of Mile Polka, featuring all 3 players, is indeed a very fine example, complete with idiomatic enunciation, double stringing and octave playing. While it is clearly audible that all three have a similar understanding of the music, the personal individuality of each player still shines through. Magic. Pádraig had many pupils, among them two people who became my primary oral sources of information on Pádraig, as well as on the musical repertoire of Sliabh Luachra. These were Johnny O'Leary and Mick Duggan. In particular, it was Mick, or Mikey as he was also known, who introduced me to Pádraig's notation systems. He also explained the fiddle method, while Johnny deciphered the box code. Over the years, I had many sessions and conversations with these two great people, both individually and together, in their respective houses, as well as in hostelries such as Dan O'Connell's in Knocknagree and Lyons in Scartaglen. Among the first sets of tunes I learned on those occasions were two jigs. Johnny named the first as Pádraig's Lark in the Morning, while the second is titled Tom O'Connor's Jig in Ceolrinc na hÉireann No. 2. I'd like to play these two jigs now. I'd now like to consider Pádraig's fiddle notation in some further detail. This is a slide for which he did not give a name. However, in the present era, it is widely known as Dennis Murphy's slide. In addition to outlining the melody, so indicating the notes to be played in sequence, Pádraig also provided a range of what may be termed performance directives. In particular, he specified the bowing for the entirety of every fiddle tune that he wrote. This is done by the use of slur signs and by the appropriate marking of bow directions. In general, he marked up bows predominantly, with down bows being rarely marked. From my perusal of hundreds of Padraig's bowed manuscripts, it has become clear that he specified particular bowing patterns for each of the different tune types. For example, in the case of the slide, such as we are now considering, he indicated at certain times that a quaver or an eighth note was to be bowed with the note or notes immediately following. Bowing across the beat in this manner creates a particular phrasing inflection and thereby helps to imbue the music with its idiomatic rhythmic characteristic, or in a word, its persona. This bowing feature is not specified on each possible occurrence, but rather is distributed consistently throughout the whole tune. So for example, the beginning of that slide, we have there are the notes, but Padraig bowed it this way. So we get dum dum dee dum dee dum dee dum. And that feature helps greatly to give the slide its idiomatic persona, as I've already mentioned. So I'd now like to play you a set of slides. Indeed, the second one is the one we've just been going through, Denis Murphy's slide. The first one is known as Paddy Cronin's slide. Like Denis, Paddy also learned the fiddle from Padraig. Many people will know that Paddy spent about 40 years living in Boston. Also, I'd like to mention that Paddy made a great recording of these two slides back in 1949 before he departed for the US. Through these tunes, Paddy Cronin's slide and Denis Murphy's slide, we are honouring the memory of two major figures in the world of Irish traditional fiddle playing, both of them pupils of Padraig O'Keeffe. Padraig himself was a wonderful player of slow airs. Those who heard him in person have all commented on the beauty and expressiveness in his playing. He displayed a superb command of the instrument with the ability to invoke a sparse and appropriate level of vibrato as required. These features come across in his playing of tunes such as O'Donnell's Lament. Also, he passed on to some of his pupils a similar ability in the playing of airs. For example, The Star Above the Garter by Denis Murphy and Julia Clifford includes 4 airs. Notating a slow air can be difficult, if not indeed impossible. However, Padraig did not shy away from this task. I'd now like to show you his notation of Bean an Ir Rua. The legend on the left-hand side specifies that on the second, or A string, the second finger is to be placed close to the first, thereby indicating the key of G. The repeated dots after various numbers denotes a lengthening of this note, somewhat akin to how a pause sign would be used in standard notation. The capital letter T underneath a group of 2 notes specifies a trill, as Padraig called it. Today we would consider this to be a roll type ornament with the articulation and relative timing appropriate to the expression of the slow air. Note also that the bar lengths correspond to the lines of the song text. I would like to dedicate this air to someone who has done a huge amount for Irish music on both sides of the Atlantic. He has been an inspiration for countless fiddlers and has left an indelible mark on those whose lives he touched. And he has left the wonderful legacies here at Boston College of Gaelic Roots and his mammoth collection of Irish music. I refer, of course, to the one and only Seamus Connolly, a great friend to Irish music and indeed to me personally. Thank you so much for all you've done, Seamus. I'll now play 3 polkas from a set of manuscripts that were given to me by Caoimhín Machaí. Although Pádraig didn't name any of these tunes, the first 2 are now known within the tradition of the area as the Anna Beck polka and Pete Bradley's polka, respectively. As the third tune was still nameless, I called it the Glounthaune polka in honour of Pádraig's home place. That's for me. In the course of various conversations that I had with Mick Duggan, he spoke a number of times about what he said Pádraig referred to as the 5 golden rules. In essence, these were a set of what may be termed playing guidelines or perhaps directives. As may be seen, these relate to matters of holding the instrument itself, namely the fiddle and the bow. Pádraig had given similar sets of rules to some other pupils, both verbally and written in his manuscripts. While there may have been a fair degree of consistency with regard to much of their substantive content, the guidelines themselves varied to an extent, as did the quantity given, perhaps reflecting the emphasis needed by the pupil in question. In one particular manuscript, he gave 7 directives, which he entitled simply as rules. For the third one, he used the symbol for perpendicularity to denote that the fingers should be positioned at right angles to the strings. His usage of this term perhaps harked back to his days in the classroom as a teacher with some training in the discipline of mathematics. In all the sets of rules that I've seen, the last one is the stricture to play slowly, often written in capital letters. And next up, I'll play 2 hornpipes. As Pavlik didn't have a name on the first one, I've titled it simply Pavlik O'Keefe's Hornpipe. And the second one is Welch's Hornpipe. Here are 2 different versions from Pavlik of the reel The Morning Star. The differences relate not only to the melodic aspect, but also to the question of bars and bar lines. The first version exhibits a degree of inconsistency in this regard, particularly in the B part of the tune, while the second version has no bar lines. And to add to the confusion, there exists a third version of the tune in which he titles it as The Lark in the Morning. I suppose that in using different names for the same tune, he was just being like many other traditional musicians. On the Star Above the Garter recording by Dennis and Julia, to which I referred earlier, this reel is played by Dennis, followed by Rolling on the Ryegrass. I'd like to play the same two tunes with Rolling on the Ryegrass also coming from one of Padraig's manuscripts. This is Padraig's notation of the well-known jig, the Connachtman's Rambles. As you can see, it dates from the 22nd of January 1939. As I mentioned earlier, he usually specified up bows only. However, in this instance, he also included one down bow directive, and that on the very first note. Padraig also had a polka version of this tune, and as we can see, they're very similar. Indeed, if we were to omit one of the groupings of three notes, one of the notes in each grouping of three notes right throughout, the conversion process becomes very easy. So for example, if I omit one of the A's for each beat, I get and expressed as a polka, that will become like that. Now, I can't say whether it was Padraig himself that made this transformation or conversion from jig to a polka, but I'm sure it was. So I'd like to play you these two tunes. I'll play first the jig, followed by the polka. So the colour band rambles as a jig and as a polka. Since Padraig's death in 1963, his fame and stature have increased as more people, particularly outside Sliabh Luachra, have become aware of the role he played in the preservation, development and dissemination of the music of his own area. He taught many of the major names who played this music, and in doing so passed on to subsequent generations the secrets of his style of playing. He left a great legacy of tunes featuring the various tune types found within the repertoire of the area. These tunes have come down to us via the oral living tradition and also by means of his notated manuscripts, which we have been considering. And in addition to these significant achievements is his own music, the sheer power and beauty of which speaks so eloquently to us. His influence continues to be felt today, and indeed in some respects there is a renewed and reinvigorated interest in his music and in his playing, especially in the light of the wider knowledge of his huge contribution to Irish traditional music in general and to the Sliabh Luachra tradition in particular. At his former home at Clowntown, a monument is inscribed with examples of both his notation systems. I'd like to finish by playing the fiddle polka inscribed thereon. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in person in the future. Thanks.